I had a question come up at a presentation a couple weeks ago, may or may not end up on the video, but somebody asked, once the insecticide has kind of worn off after a couple of years of use on the nets, is the net itself still useful?
Yeah, so the nets, when they're distributed, are saturated with a chemical called permethrin. And yes, the insecticide eventually can wane from the net. A plain net, if it's in use, if it's over the bed, is going to be effective. It's not going to be as effective hanging in the room as it was when it had insecticides on it. Another initiative is actually to go in with this same chemical, with this same insecticide, and spray the walls of the houses. So a lot of the villages, there's major initiatives for teams of village people to go in and spray the walls, and then they will respray the nets at that time. So some of the earlier nets might be losing their effectiveness. So the wall spraying or home spraying is also a big part of the initiative. So, and that's the other thing, the insecticide that we have right now is minimally toxic to fish and wildlife and humans, whereas the alternative really is going back to DDT. And there's some areas in East Africa right now where the development of the resistance to the insecticide has been on the rise, and they've approved going back to using DDT, which is bad for everything else down the food chain. If the mosquitoes are infected, the birds eat them, and the higher mammals eat them, and it kills fish if it gets on the ponds. So DDT is a bad thing. We know that, but in some areas it's the only thing that will stop the mosquitoes. So again, we need to do this now, and it's not cheap. There are organizations out there that are getting many of these materials at cost, but the cost is not zero. Yeah.
Great. Anything else that you think is important for people to know about imaginary malaria?
I'm trying to think back on the questions that came to me, but the biggest one was that someone asked, why is it that we don't just make all these testing and these drugs available to everyone in Africa? And that's what it's all about. That's why we need $75 million, because we're going to have to distribute these widely in order for this to work. And I don't know if you heard Bill Gates on 60 Minutes just this past week. He's got an amazing vision, and he has an understanding of what a complex disease this is. He's putting a goal on it, but unlike polio and some of the other diseases where they can see the end of it, the end on malaria is still uncertain. It's going to take a lot of time and effort and a lot of money to make it happen in the time that it needs to happen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.